and that has quickly advanced to Vector jumping in and helping with some of the logistics to get some of those supplies to Ukraine. So, Christy, do you know? I actually don't know exactly when and how we started connecting because Katie
Um,
Johnson
yeah, I believe
this.
Katie had worked with us on shipments to other regions, and so we were kind of already connected, but certainly I don't think it was in that area of the world or anything like that. I think it was just another kind of loose association. And then yeah, I wish I could I somehow need to like do a map of all the people that we found in this network and how we found them.
Yeah, but it's okay. It's all good. We're still here.
We're
Yeah,
here.
Yeah.
and it works. And Vicky, thank you for sharing. It's incredible how pulling people together and connecting the dots really help. Christy introduced me with Natalia, and I know you know Natalia. And right now we're able to take it off her plate so she can focus on other matters because she was doing it all by herself,
Right.
like looking for transportation. It's incredible. And it just by getting together once in a while, you find a way to do things more efficiently, and truly everybody wins in the end. Doesn't get much better than that. But
Yeah.
thank you all you do for to support Ukraine, by the way. That's really impressive.
Appreciate it. And you might not know, Stan, but Vector was a financial supporter of our fundraiser that we held
Oh,
last month. So we
It looks
appreciate
like
it.
it went really well.
Well, it went extremely well. So yeah,
good.
for those of you just jumping on, I'd like to introduce you to my colleague, Michael Stabner. He is our videographer and storyteller extraordinaire.
Oh,
So he has a couple of minutes to visit with us. So Christy, when you're ready to jump in, he can be here for the first part of our meeting, and then I will share some other things that we've been
yeah,
Ukrainian partners recently.
absolutely. Hey, Debbie, how are you? Hi, Louisa.
Hi, I finally joined one.
We'll take it anytime.
I know.
Anytime. Yes, you're welcome at any time. Yeah, I know we have people jumping in, and of course, it's like, we're all running 100 miles an hour this time of year anyway. So we always have people that are like, "Oh, catch the replay," and I understand that, and I'm sometimes having to be that person for other people's events as well. So yeah, Michael, I know we only have you for a few minutes today, so I want to make the most of your time, and then anybody who does miss this first part can catch up on the replay. But yes, for those of you who don't know, I was able to actually, when was that? September, meet Vicky in person for the first time, which was so amazing after being a part of this community for the last couple of years and being a fan of Matter. And of course, many of the nonprofits that we've worked with shipping materials over have been recipients of Matter medical supplies. And it's just been amazing and an incredible partnership. And so I really want to hear, I got to hear a little bit about the trip to Ukraine, but I'm glad you're here to talk about it more. And then we do have the video. I don't know that we'll have time to share the whole thing in here, but we will get that to people to be able to see because it's beautifully done. So congratulations on that as well. But yeah, Michael, without further ado, we'll let you talk about it.
Well, first, the video is roughly done. I just did it quickly for our staff here, and then I'm trying to find time to really own it. So it tells more of a cohesive story, but you get what happened through that
Yeah.
video. It all came about, we've been sending medical supplies with partners to Ukraine since the war started. But we'd never talked about it really externally through Matter at all. We all talked about it internally, but we'd never shared anything. And then I thought, why haven't we been there? Why don't we go and see where the medical supplies are actually being distributed? And it took a lot of logistical hoops to make it happen. Natalia also helped me with that. And then we were able to go. So I brought our director of Matter 360, who is in charge of the medical supplies that come in and out of the building. And didn't take much convincing for Chris to go with me. And then he brought a friend, and we basically went there without asking any questions of our partner on the ground, Chalice of Mercy, Valentina. Really, we asked no questions because we wanted to experience it raw and real, and not have any preconceived notions of what we would see. Chris and I have traveled all over the world for decades. And we both agreed this was our most impactful, favorite trip of our lives. Hands down, easily the best trip we've ever been on. Just because it was so real and powerful and the people were amazing. Um, so yeah, so we got to see where the medical supplies end up. When they leave here, they end up in her uh, warehouse in Zaporizhia, which is on the far eastern side of Zaporizhia. So it's just a few miles from the front line. And then what she does is she puts together a small box truck full of pallets of supplies and drives them directly to the frontline field hospitals. The level one hospital that soldiers have just gotten off the front lines from medics, and they hit this level one trauma center. And without having those supplies there, the surgeons kept saying they would have almost nothing without the support of people in the U.S. sending really excess medical supplies that hospitals here don't use.
Yeah.
They just could not thank us enough. And then they were just absolutely shocked that three weird Americans showed up in a trench hospital just off the front lines. They were shocked, and we were just so honored to be there. But they've been working in these really hard conditions for 2.5 years, and nobody nobody stops and visits.
Was this
Of
the
course.
underground hospital, the hospital in the bunker?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
which we didn't know we were going to
Yeah.
until we were running through the woods. So we really didn't ask questions. So all of a sudden, one of the medics is just yelling for us to run and looking up in the sky, and we just start running behind them. We had no idea where we were going for the longest time, and all of a sudden we go down into this trench
Wow.
field hospital.
Yeah.
So just because it was so real, we really got to see what they're doing. Out of this little field hospital with two surgery beds, they're seeing between 90 and 120 patients a night.
Two surgery
Um,
beds. Wow.
yeah, so they're just patching them up as fast as they can, stabilizing them, getting them to the level two hospital, which is in a village just outside than that field hospital.
Yeah.
They get more treatment there, and then they go to the hospitals in the cities. Um, but without that treatment at that first stop, a lot of them wouldn't make it.
Yeah.
So, and
Wow.
it was just, we get there, we meet these surgeons in this little house at first in a village. What happens is these villages are evacuated. So there's all these empty houses, and the soldiers then, that's where they stay, is in these houses. And the surgeons were staying in this house. And like they said, it's a house of a nice elderly couple, and they take really good care of it while they're gone until they can come back. So they have great respect for where they're staying.
Yeah.
And they served us wedding food. One of them had left and gone to a relative's wedding the week before, and they brought all this food back so they could share it with us. They're
Wow.
really beautiful with a veterinarian, uh, OBGYN that was there, and it's just any surgeon they can get.
Yeah. And what were the conversations like with soldiers or medics, or what did you talk about? What did they say? Yeah, just what was general conversation like?
Yeah, we talked about, so what are we missing? What are they not getting that they really need? That was the big thing, and that's why it was so important to have Chris there. He can ask those questions and get some answers. Um, Basically, they said anything, everything you can give us is what we need. But the big things were, wound staplers, uh, and things for to stop bleeding. They have special powders that help stop the bleeding, excessive bleeding. They needed that. But a lot of these things they're thousands of dollars to buy new, and Ukraine just cannot afford to buy this equipment. Where we can get it there, at less than cost or free to them. So that was the big thing. And then they wanted to know why was the big question. Everybody we met, why were we there? We asked that question a lot of times too. Why were we there? And we always had good answers for ourselves. Why it was hugely important. One of the big things that they kept saying is they felt so isolated and alone, and that nobody understood what was happening and what they were going through, especially globally. So everybody wanted them. Number one, the first thing they would say as we're leaving is remember, and then they would say tell this story. That make sure everybody knows what's happening here and what we're doing to save our fellow countrymen. And these are, they're soldiers, but I got to experience how they become soldiers. One morning I was going to do some filming for another organization while I was there. I was being picked up by a pastor to go to his church in the morning. I didn't know him. I didn't know where I was going. I barely knew what I was filming. And we drove through Zaporizhia about 45 minutes, and we got to a checkpoint, and he got conscripted. He got drafted at the checkpoint and was gone. And I was in his car in the passenger seat. I had no idea where I was. I had no idea where I was going. Didn't know this guy. And so here it is, a pastor with a 2-month-old baby, a 4-year-old and a 6-year-old, and he's been conscripted. And so I was able to get a hold of his wife through a bunch of phone calls, and she was absolutely hysterically crying on the phone. That's how people end up on the front lines, because they're so desperate for soldiers, for anybody who can fight. Yeah. And that you don't see a lot of men on the streets because of that fear. And not everybody, you get paperwork that say you should not be conscripted based on who you are. If you are an employee, if you have an important job, it's kind of like here during COVID, like who could drive on the roads. Similarly, frontline workers, but there it's a little different. There it's an actual frontline. So those are the people that they're patching up. Those are the kids, the young adults, the 55-year-old, and you can get conscripted up to 61 years old. And I'm 58, so it was like, oh, I could still get conscripted. So it makes it you more understand who and why it's so important to be giving them everything they can get to fix these citizens up. They're citizen soldiers.
Yeah.
So
I think one thing that on the last call that we had, Lee did a great job of explaining, Ukraine is an enormous country. Daria, hello, I see you there. Daria's in Lviv.
Hello.
Hi.
It's a huge country, and there's still their own internal supply chain issues. So Lee did a really good job of explaining, if something is in the country, why can't they just get it? Why does it have to be shipped over? What was it that you saw that kind of speaks to that?
Oh, the shipping problems?
Yeah.
Yeah. So since we're in Zaporizhia and the supply chain, so Valentina, who I was with, would get a call from a surgeon in Kyiv, like he needs this specific surgical tool. Somebody's waiting for surgery, and they don't have it at all in Kyiv. And Zaporizhia is completely on the opposite side of the country from north to south. And how can they get it there? Luckily, she was able to find somebody who could drive it during the evening.
Sure.
You can't drive after midnight, but able to get there in a rush. So a lot of this is just you have a really good postal system that's there, and Valentina kept talking about how great the postal system was, but it's still, you're shipping medical supplies to the postal system.
Right.
It's you do what you can, but yeah, it is a huge country. It's like driving from Pennsylvania to Nebraska,
Yeah,
you know, like the whole Midwest
right.
inside.
Yeah. What were a couple of your you saw and experienced a lot, um, much of which you didn't know you were going to experience. What were a couple of your takeaways?
Oh, my takeaways is I wrote this, I should have it. I wrote this riding on the bus out of country when I was, well, leaving Lviv, getting on the bus to go to Warsaw. I sat and wrote my thoughts as I was riding. And one of um, it was about people who are working in the dark, like that nobody knows what they're doing. They just keep putting their head down and working 7 days a week to make sure these medical supplies get where they need to go, and how important it is to support nonprofits and people doing that work, because they feel alone and unheard, and people get dismissive of nonprofit work. They get tired and exhausted, and they 2.5 years goes by in a conflict, and people just stop caring.
Yeah.
But yet, then there's those other people that are doing this silently every day of their lives, making sure that other people survive and that don't get complacent, don't feel like it doesn't matter. Like, pay attention to those people that are working so hard to help others and so selflessly.
Yeah.
That's what I kept seeing, this selfless.
One of the things I remember that Michael shared when he got back is that the people who are on the front lines receiving these medical supplies from our warehouse, it's almost impossible for them to get it around their heads that there is so much surplus of supplies that are valuable and useful in the United States. And how is it that a hospital in the United States just was ready to throw these items away, and that matter somehow harnessed them, and that somehow they got all the way through a partner to them at this frontline hospital? And it's just an incredible concept to think about the waste that occurs in a country like America, and how we and our partners can accomplish so much good for these people by finding a way to get those supplies through the supply chain, whatever it looks like in
Yeah.
Ukraine, to those frontline hospitals. I mean, it's an honor, and everything that you guys do, everybody's small part in it is what is giving us just tremendous honor and pleasure to be able to help these beautiful people. The other thing that you mentioned so much is just how grateful the people are, how kind they are, how I don't know, heartfelt, wonderful human beings.
Yeah.
And so Valentina is here in the States. She's going to be here in a few minutes, actually, from Chalice and Mercy, and she comes here in the winter to do fundraising.
Okay.
She comes personally to make sure that people understand what's happening and make sure she can keep running. But she had just been here a week, and then she sees a friend sends her a video that just half a kilometer from her warehouse was a huge missile strike, and everything was on fire. And she's trying to figure out what's going on with her warehouse, if the windows have been blown out again, and if it's safe and who's safe. And we talked on Friday, her and I, for 3.5 hours about this. She's in Wisconsin now. Just that process of her trying to understand why she's not there.
Yeah.
I mean, it was just a huge burden on her heart that she wasn't there in that time. I'm like, that's going to happen all the time. But you have to be here to make sure that you can ship your supplies.
Right. Is she only
That's
visiting Minneapolis and Wisconsin, or is she going other places?
Yeah, she actually lives in Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
She moved to Wisconsin when she was 18, and then from Ukraine, and then she moved back during this time to work. And she's from Zaporizhia.
Got it.
But yeah, she comes back to her home in Wisconsin to make sure she can ship these
Yeah.
things. And we have out of here, we're looking at shipping 3 shipping containers every month
Hmm.
to Ukraine in 2025,
Awesome.
minimum. Um, and that's a lot of supplies.
It's a lot of supplies. Absolutely. Well, do you have a few minutes in case anybody else has questions? I know I've
Sure.
monopolized your time.
Yeah, no, and Valentina is not here yet, so I have,
Okay.
I do, if I
yeah.
may.
Go, Stan.
Michael, thank you so much. Incredible journey. Thank you for sharing. And I don't know if you know, we work on opening Vector Ukraine in Lviv. And I wanted to ask, maybe you have a word of advice since you've seen the logistical issues there on the ground, maybe some sort of suggestion, what can be of the first priority, if you will.
Space would be the first thing
Space.
to hold everything and then distribute it, I would guess. Like, how do you find enough space, enough warehouse space to hold any supplies you might get there? And I know that's what's the problem with other people is that because sometimes you have to hold it for a while, how do you have enough space to stage it, and also to separate it appropriately so that when it is time to go out and it needs to go out quickly, that you don't have to search through pallets, that you like, here's this kind of supplies, they're right here. They're already pre-sorted and could go as fast as possible when that window opens.
So if I
That would be
understand
the biggest
correctly,
thing.
it's people struggling. They receive a lot of items and then they just A, have no place to put them, and B, how to find it quickly after they stored it.
Because it happens fast sometimes,
Hmm.
that it needs to go and it needs to go this afternoon. And if you've already pre-sorted it, then you're ready.
Mhm. And thank you very much for that. And one more question. You mentioned that the Postal Service is distributing medical supplies. Do you happen to remember, is it Nova Pošta? The red circle with the letter N in it looks like English H. And
That's
it's good,
what I
yeah.
know of. Yeah.
Because
We can go to the
Could ask
post office.
Valentina.
Yeah, and the post office in Zaporizhia, it's big and it's like a warehouse when you go in.
Mhm.
And maybe it's the same in Lviv, a similar people are bringing in big items and they've got the big docks right outside. So it's people are really shipping through the postal service large items and
Gotcha.
pallets. And
Hmm.
they have a good system.
Thank you. Thank you. I was curious if it's the private company or if it's a government postal service, because we have to.
I'll ask Valentina today who she ships through.
If you could, yeah, because I'm really curious, because I wonder sometimes in the times like this, who is able, in Ukraine in particular, to perform at a higher level, the private company or the government one.
Are you talking about Ukrposhta?
So yeah, Ukrposhta is the
I'm
government service.
pretty sure it's not Ukrposhta. It should be Nova Poshta. Ukrposhta is not so fast as Nova Poshta. As I know, like Nova Poshta, this year Nova Poshta was nominated for the best postal service in the world. So I'm pretty sure that Ukrposhta cannot compare with Nova Poshta.
Thank you. Thank you, Daddy.
Yeah, they raved and raved about the service, how fast it is. So you're right. Yeah.
Those guys are incredible. I know quite a bit about them, and they were able to grow during the war. And and I feel like that's what makes this forum so powerful when different companies get together, nonprofits, private sector, and seems like sometimes in critical times like this, we're actually able to perform at a very high level, you know.
Yeah, there's a possibility. I'm working on it that I would be back there in April. And I could certainly, I stopped in Lviv on the way out. So if you need something filmed or anything done in Lviv, let's stay in contact.
Oh, absolutely. We'll
Thank-
definitely connect with Daria. And if you'll be in an area, I mean, it's just amazing to see somebody on a call and then see people in person. You never
Yeah,
know what
Lviv
it's
is beautiful.
It is.
Beautiful, beautiful. From what I saw from the train and the bus, but hilly and beautiful and oh my God.
There you go.
You just need to see the city center, the best part of our city.
Yeah.
Oh, you've got a tour guide waiting then.
There you
Yeah,
go.
Good.
no problem.
All right.
Of course.
Michael,
Any
thank
other
you again.
questions for Michael before he jumps off? Okay. And I put the Chalice of Mercy website in the chat as well. I was not
Okay.
familiar with them.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's great. Yeah. So if you get a chance to watch the video, we sent a long one and a
I
short
sent the
one.
long one and the short one. So
Yeah.
if
Yes,
you
and they're in
show the
chat as
short one we
well.
can today, great.
Yeah.
Gosh,
Fantastic.
it's a lovely, lovely trip, lovely people. I just adore Glory to Ukraine, right? So really loved it. So thank you all. Nice
Thank
to
you
meet
for
you all.
being here.
Thank you.
Thank you,
All right.
Michael.
And then reach out to me if you guys need anything or have a question through Vicky. All right.
Yeah. Sounds good. Thank you
Sounds
so
good.
much.
Yeah, thanks. Have a good day.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank
Thank
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
I was messaging yesterday with Oksana because I haven't talked to her in a while, and I asked her, for those of you who are not sure, Oksana has Mama Plant a Tree. She is from Kyiv and was had to flee to Spain when the war broke out. She was 8 months pregnant. And then now they are settling back after a couple stops around Europe. And so she had been planting trees. Vector had planted trees with her in Western Ukraine. And so I asked her, are you still planting trees? What's going on? And she said, yes, we've actually just planted 10,000 trees in Kharkiv. So pretty amazing there. So she has a heart for the ecological, of course, but when it comes to war, trees are also a great place for shelter and things like that. So they've just been planting trees there. For anybody interested or watching later, trees are $2 US, $2 US. And so if you want to go on there and plant some trees, you can. And I asked her, she had also, in doing this work, pivoted to working on demining because there are many places they cannot plant trees because of all the mines now that are active. And so she originally was fundraising or going to fundraise for a demining robot. And then she found out they're like, $750,000 or something. And she said, what is plan B? And so she started working with like a tech company on developing a cheaper one. And so that is exactly who Oksana is. If you ever talk to her, she's like, okay, well then what's the next step? Let's do it. And so she said the robot is ready, but they're in testing and certification and all of that. And so that is still on the way, and she'll hope to continue doing that. But it was good to catch up with her. And then I guess 2 weeks ago now, I had the opportunity to meet with Yarrow when I was in East Tennessee. And so that was great getting to see him in person for the first time. He actually messaged me. He's not able to be here because he's in meetings right now. So much as like Vicky said when we first started the call, people, he's in school in this smaller town called Johnson City in Tennessee. And when the war broke out, he said, people were literally showing up on my doorstep. How do I help? And so he's been, has his organization called Restore Ukraine. They help rebuild houses and homes after they've been affected by war. And then he also, of course, as if you're living in the US, we had two major hurricanes a couple of months back that devastated his area of Tennessee as well. And so he's in a bit of a flux with Restore Ukraine. And so he said, now it's my turn to give back to my community. And so he's actually now doing consulting with the Tennessee version of FEMA and helping them rebuild in his own community because he said, it's my turn to give back. They were here for me. Now I'm going to be here for them. And so he's now got his family over and they're getting resettled. And so he was in FEMA meetings this morning and not able to join, but still doing really good work there. And some of our other regulars I need to check in on that are registered for today. But again, I know it's a wild, crazy time of year to try and be here. So Daria, how are you? How are things going in Lviv? What's happening there?
So I'm well. Everything is fine in general. the situation with the electricity is a bit tough. Let's say it this way. Like we have power outages almost every day, but you're just like getting used to it because you have this schedule when you have the electricity, when you don't have the electricity. So yeah, I'm planning my day according to this schedule, because even basic stuff becomes way harder, even, taking shower, charging your phone.
Sure.
Yeah, like basic stuff
Yeah.
uh, is not like easy when you don't have electricity because you don't have water, you don't have internet. But thanks God we have power banks, we have this power station small that you can install into your house. So yeah, we're at this point we're just trying to do our best
Yeah.
to survive the winter. Let's
Has
say.
it already, that I was going to ask you, has it already started getting cold there?
Yeah, it's snowing right now.
Okay. And
Yeah.
so obviously we had Matter on and they're talking about mixed medical supplies. What are some of the other needs you're seeing? Is it still like clothing, generators, those kinds of things? Or is there other items for donation that you think are needed?
Generators are needed for sure.
Yeah.
Maybe some blankets, probably, candles. Also, I'm not sure how to say that in English, but these jackets with when you're walking down the street and it's dark, so everyone can
Reflective
see you.
vests.
Yes,
Oh,
this
reflective.
stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's the most, I think, useful stuff at this point
Okay.
for us, for me,
Sure.
for example, in Lviv.
Right.
Luckily, I have everything because yeah, I'm able to get this stuff for myself. But I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of families that are struggling. They don't have generators, they don't have power banks, they don't have heat, and all this stuff. So probably that would be great if they could receive this stuff from somebody else.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Hannah, I don't know if you're able to talk. I see you're from Global Empowerment Mission. So I talked to somebody on your team a couple of weeks ago. I'm trying to remember his name, but thank you for joining us. I know you have been active in Ukraine as well, so I'd love for everybody to hear more about your work.
Sure. So yeah, thanks for having me. It's my first time here. I'm part of the Global Empowerment Mission. I would say Ukraine is probably our biggest program. We have a huge hub out there. We're actually closing one of our warehouses. We have one in Ukraine and one in Poland. We have a huge team. I want to say probably a team of like 40 people. Space is definitely not our problem. A couple of our programs, I mean, we do daily distributions of family necessity kits and food kits. We do an enormous amount of them. I think they're up in the millions in terms of the count since the start of the war. We also do a window repair program because in lots of cities and neighborhoods, oblasts, the structure is still standing, but the windows are, blown in. So I think we were up in like 100,000 windows so far. My favorite program is the kind of full or circular economy agriculture program that supports farmers. So we support farmers with different types of machinery and fertilizers and just different supplies. And then we buy their seeds from them, or we supply them with seeds, and then we buy their product from them and then distribute it. So
Awesome.
it then ends up just being this kind of circular program. That's kind of my favorite program that we do globally. So yeah, Ukraine, I would say is probably our shining star. It's like really like our peak program. It doesn't have kind of a sign of stopping, although we're trying to be as lean as possible. Logistics is always something that we're looking into getting support with. We do have a couple partners that are I would say super generous, I'd say. I think there's still, I would say in terms of all the conflicts that we're seeing or all the disasters that we're seeing, Ukraine seems to be the one that is actually the most funded, even though it is dwindling over the past few years. It still seems like there's an appetite there. But we're always looking for different providers because we get so many requests from donors to be their shipper, to be their consignee, to well, what have you. So I have a couple of requests on my table now, and I think our current partners aren't always able to fill that need. So I'm always looking around. So I was happy to get this invitation and join you guys.
Perfect. Well, after I saw, I think I posted in PQMD and one of your teammates responded in there. And then I started, I knew you by reputation, but wasn't sure exactly what you were doing. And then just kept reading and reading on your website. And it's really incredible. So thank you for all the amazing work that your team is doing. I appreciate it. And I'm so glad you could be here with us.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Demetrio, how are you? Are you able to talk for a minute?
Hi, how are you?
Good.
Yeah,
How are
okay.
you?
Give me a few minutes, please. I
Okay.
should complete something and I will be back to you, okay?
You go
Thank
for
you.
it. No problem. I know
Thank
you're
you. Thank you so much.
yeah. Well, one of the things that I wanted Vicky on here, well, we always want Vicky on here. She's a bright light on our meetings, but is to talk about their recent trip there. The other thing is Yarrow can join us. I know Lee's not here, Frederick, some of our studies, but of course, and even as Hannah just mentioned, dwindling, there's a huge the news cycle changes. There's, as we know, there's crisis, a new crisis that pops up, another worthy crisis that pops up every week, and people only have so much funding to give, so much donations, things like that. One of the things that I knew much less about until I went to visit Matter a couple of months ago was their social enterprise side. And so I was like, I really want you to talk about this. I've been part of the social enterprise world for a long time, and I think it's an amazing funding model for nonprofits to be able to expand their work, to expand what they're doing, and to be able to offer something new to donors and partners, as well as diversify their own services and funding streams. So I wanted Vicky to really talk about that and hear more about what they're doing. And of course, everyone in our Ukraine calls knows about Matter's endless mixed medical supplies. Mixed medical supplies is the phrase that always comes to mind when I talk about Matter, but they do so much more. And so particularly on the social enterprise side, I wanted her to speak to that, especially for those who are trying to figure out what funding looks like moving forward and all of that. So Vicky, I'll let you explain a little more.
Okay. Yeah, that was a great segue. So we have adopted a little bit of a different model, charity model for a nonprofit that a typical charity normally runs with an annual fund campaign and things like that. As you know, if you do annual fund campaigns, some of those fundraising models can be very expensive to run. And so we decided to shift our focus and build social enterprises within our nonprofit. And the goal is that by the end of 2025, we want to be a fully sustainable model of charity. And that doesn't mean that we don't need donor support or we will never need donor support or want to have donor support. But the idea is that with these few small businesses that we're running in a very entrepreneurial way within Matter, that we then, once we've achieved this self-sustaining model, then every donor dollar that comes to us, we don't have to charge a fee, we don't have to charge any overhead. Every single dollar will go exactly to the project that they want to support. And so how are we doing this? So within Matter, we have two social enterprises, and the first one is around employee engagement activities. So we work with corporations and they fund volunteer kits. Hannah, you mentioned, I think some food items that you guys do, maybe what you do is similar, but we host employee engagement events, and corporations will pay for a volunteer kit that we can send then across the United States for them to offer engagement events for their employees for good. And they pay for those. We have a little profit built in, and that money is used to go toward our social enterprise charity model. And then the second one, which is quite a bit larger, is our Matter 360 initiative. And that is the term that we use for the operation that we have for collecting surplus donated supplies and equipment from around the country, from hospital partners, from medical supply distributors, and we bring those things into our warehouse. We have over 50,000 square feet in our warehouse, and then we are repurposing those things. So for our projects like Ukraine, our other projects in other parts of the world, we are providing those supplies at no cost. But we get millions and millions of pounds of supplies. So we don't have a place to donate all of them. And so when we receive a piece of equipment, for example, that's too sophisticated to go into a rural African hospital, or we receive pallets and pallets of one device. So once we've given away the devices that are needed for our global projects, we have millions of dollars of excess, or millions of items of excess left. And so what we're doing is selling those items to third parties who are then typically have their own network of buyers for hospitals and doctors in other countries, usually Central America and Mexico, for example. And then we use that money to help offset our operations costs. And we're using that to fund our operations so that we don't have to use donor dollars to cover those costs. And then one other really important element that we're doing is working with health educators, so medical schools and veterinary schools and nursing schools, for example, from high school level all the way up through graduate programs. And we are providing them with expired supplies. So we get an enormous number of expired supplies donated to us each year, and many, many other charities that are like ours do not take any expired supplies. So we've worked over the last couple of years to find outlets for those expired supplies so that they don't end up in a landfill. And what we're doing is building up a program to work with these schools to sell them these expired supplies that they can use for training. So what's happened is they normally don't have access to expired supplies. They'll give us a list of what they need for their training programs for a semester. And when we fulfill the list, we have an honor system. We ask them, what would you normally pay online? What would you normally pay from your supplier for these if you were to buy them retail? They might say, okay, that was $5,000. And then we trust them what their pricing is, because we don't have the ability to go granular with pricing every item. And then we just ask them, great, why don't you just give us half of that? So we're using that money to, again, help offset our costs and fulfill our self-sustainable model of charity program.
And will you explain real quick, because it's kind of, for those of us probably in Western countries, it's not as natural to think about expired supplies. So talk about what you mean by expired supplies and why those are still good to use.
Oh, yes. Okay. So when I talk about expired supplies, I mean, you think about disposables. So think about alcohol prep pads, for example, sterile gloves and non-sterile gloves, bandages, wound care of all kinds. There are many, many items. Almost all medical supplies have an expiration date that's put on them. It doesn't necessarily mean that they're no longer good. So we want to be able to use them and to repurpose them and redistribute them so that they can still live out a fulfilling life as a supply, instead of throwing them away. So when you think about medications, it's a little bit different. We don't work with medications, so these are all just wound care supplies and just the large variety of DME and disposables, Foley catheters. Think about a nurse going through training on how to become a nurse or how to become a doctor. They're for non-human use. So expired supplies can be used for non-human use. And that's what we're trying to find outlets for to give them to the nursing schools.
And what was
Did that
this?
answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Because I know, yeah, if I hear expired, I think milk. So I wanted everyone to have a different understanding when I've sorted medical supplies, and I'm like, what do you mean this Band-Aid isn't not still good? It's still good. So what was this conversation like? There are, in my experience, very few nonprofits using a social enterprise model. I hope to see it grow more and more. I think it again helps with that long-term sustainability. What was that conversation like? Because you guys have been around for a while, so it's a different kind of transition.
It is. Yeah, that's a good question. So Matter is a very entrepreneurial thinking organization. So for those of you who are with nonprofits, I encourage you to adopt entrepreneurial thinking and just finding creative ways that you can support your organization outside of just relying on the very cyclical nature of fundraising. So a fundraising can go, you can have years of great success, you can have years of not very great success, and we didn't want to rely on that cyclical nature. So we just put our heads together and came up with this idea. If those that are watching and listening, I would recommend a movie that is relatively new. I'm not exactly sure which platform it's showing on, maybe Amazon. It's called Uncharitable.
Mm.
And this movie was based on a very now famous TED Talk by a man named Dan Pallotta, who talked about how Americans view nonprofits from a very different lens that we actually want to be viewed. So, in other words, the restrictions that are put on nonprofits to operate with tax-free status, that they have a lot of restrictions to be able to operate efficiently, and there are a lot of people who don't think that um, uh, nonprofits should be able to make money.
Mhm.
But in fact,
Or hire the
we're the
best
ones
staff.
who are really helping the world. So I encourage you to watch that film. It's really interesting and it'll give you a new perspective about nonprofits and how they might be able to operate more efficiently.
And how did you land on your two revenue streams?
Those two operations within Matter were already two of our four main pillars. And so um, the employee engagement pillar was offering non-perishable healthy snack packs. We've now added a Hope Kit, which is comprised of many of the things that we're getting donated in the warehouse, and those kits are providing immediate need to underhoused populations. And so that particular one morphed during COVID when we lost our volunteers. We lost all our volunteers coming into the warehouse, and we were wondering how can we reach out to our corporate partners by providing something that we can ship to people's homes. And so the volunteer kit actually came about at the same time when we were considering how can we develop this social enterprise model. And then the Matter 361, it's a natural because we have a warehouse full. We are getting 300 to 400 pallets every month from hospitals around the country. And so we're under tremendous pressure to continue to rotate through and move through all the things that we get. We don't want to hold them in our warehouse. That's not the purpose of it. We want to be able to continue to find ways that they can get out into the market and do good. And so just our thinking around how can we move out these supplies and in a more efficient way that could actually help us and help our partners. That's how we came up with it.
Perfect. And how long have you been using the social enterprise model?
We are in the end of our third year.
Okay. So that's a
So we
pretty
are getting ready
years.
to
It's a really
launch.
good
Yeah,
transition.
and we have ranged from 76% fully sustainable to 96% fully sustainable. So it ranges monthly based on what our operations are. We're getting ready to launch our next 3-year strategic plan in January. And so our goal is that by the end of 2025, as I mentioned, to be fully sustainable.
4 years is incredible. Great job.
Thank you. It's
Yeah.
an honor to be here.
Yeah. Questions for Vicky?
Yes, Vicky, that's so impressive. Is there any way we can coin something on the calendar? I mean, I'm 5 hours away. I would love to visit if I can and like see for my own eyes. I'm
They're
just keeping listening,
awesome.
taking notes, but it's just incredible stuff.
Well, Stan, we'd love to have you. I always give a shout out at the end of every meeting. Please come to Minneapolis. We're not just
Yeah.
the flyover state. If you are in the Midwest, we would love to have you visit us. We're a
Thank-
small, mighty, passionate group of people. And Stan, let's connect offline and
yeah.
get you up here to visit us.
Their
Sounds
office
like
does look like a startup as well. I walked in and said, "This is like no nonprofit office I've ever seen."
But next year, we're celebrating our 25th anniversary.
Amazing.
Wow.
Incredible. Other questions for Vicky?
What was the name of that movie again?
Uncharitable. I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you.
And I linked his TED Talk in there as well. It's a great TED Talk.
Yeah.
I already put it on the chat. It's available on Amazon.
Amazon. Oh, great.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
You can rent it.
Oh, perfect.
Mm.
And I think he has a book by the same name as well, maybe.
Yep, the TED Talk's good too. 20-minute TED Talk.
Yes, it is one I always point to. I love the statement of, with all the profit, with all of the world's issues that charities are solving, why isn't that we can't hire the best talent to work on them? And I think that's
Yeah.
really telling.
Well, and one thing I would add about that, and just a little plug for the way we are at Matter, is, we have 35 employees here, from warehouse staff up to our president. And so when we learned about this movie, we decided to have movie day. So from 2 to 3 in the afternoon, one afternoon, we made popcorn and we invited the entire staff to come into our little Shamwari meeting room. And we all cozied up and watched the movie. It was great. And then had a discussion after about it.
Very cool. Any other questions for Vicky?
Well, it's been a pleasure talking with you guys today.
Yes, I felt it was important we
Thank
had.
you. Thank you so much for everybody, what everyone is doing to help the people of Ukraine.
Yes, absolutely. Demetria, do you have a minute? What's going on in your world?
Yeah, sure. Well, there's no changes for us here. We still continue our work. We process humanitarian aid for volunteers in our warehouse, cross-docking, paperwork, and so on, so on. Plus, we continue to work with containers with second-hand medical equipment from Canada. Plus, we got recently more suppliers from Far East, from Japan and South Korea.
Wow.
We recently organized a few deliveries to Ahmadiyat Clinic, including custom formalities, which was an issue because it's not a subject for custom formalities in Ukraine, according to some bureaucratic legislation. But thanks God, we passed it through. I know it may sound strange, but well, plus we carry on working with a few Polish charity organizations. They collecting second-hand and used medical equipment, including even beds, because beds very important right now. So all medical capacity is under military, but still cuts, still shortage. So we just had a few trailers to Poltava region, and we sent various materials for hospital and several trailers. It was necessary since the situation in the regions is not. It's even worse than in center, but so we're still in line, and thanks God we got some support, and thank you guys for supporting us.
Yeah.
So that's still the same news for now.
Yeah. Still keep
Demetria,
up.
where are you getting your beds?
They're collecting from hospitals, because when they renew old to new ones, they also have a problem where to send the used ones, because it costs money, but we can take it because
Okay, good.
Same deliveries we do from German. And
okay.
Polish and Poland and German. In German we had one of our friends. He is going through the hospital, around some hospitals, and make agreements with them to take what they don't need actually anymore. So, but everything is needed right now, badly needed in Ukraine, yeah, for sure.
Dmytro, Sten here. I'll chime in quickly. Good to meet you in person. Are you in Poland or are you in Ukraine?
I'm in Poland,
Warsaw.
but yeah,
In Warsaw. Okay.
in Warsaw, yes. Let me briefly introduce myself. I'm owner and general manager of freight forwarding company,
Yeah.
and we are from Ukraine, and we opened establishment in Poland 5 years ago in 2019. And since that time, I'm mainly in Warsaw, but originally from Mariupol.
Gotcha. And I'm originally from Sumy, and there is a Dmytro Jr., which I assume is your son.
Yeah,
I was
it's
chatting
fun.
with him this morning. We try to put something together and
Yeah, I've seen the correspondence. Yes.
yeah. So good to see you in person.
Good to see you in person too, and I hope see you in person in January. Yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I will be very close to Minneapolis. I'll be in Chicago first.
Oh, there you go. Oh, for sure. Oh, absolutely. Just let me know when you're here and let's meet.
Yeah.
Small world.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, Hannah, I may have to circle back to you when you started talking. Lee, who is usually on these calls as well, he was also in the Minneapolis area, but he called me the other day and he said, "Hey, Christy, do you think now I'm thinking about tractors. Can we load a tractor on a container?" I said, "Sure, whatever you want to do, Lee." And so he said, "Okay, I saw a field of old tractors. I'm going to go talk to the guy." And so that is kind of the way Lee's mind works. So yeah, we may have some more agricultural stuff headed to Ukraine before too long.
FYI, I actually working with a guy now who ships that all the time. What he does, and he's apparently very good at it. He takes a tractor, not all of them, but most of them, like a smaller John Deere's, he disassembles them so they fit into the container, and he ships them that way. That way you don't have to pay as a roll in, roll out. It's more expensive, and he's getting traction because the way he does it, people actually able to assemble it back when they receive it. So it gets tricky sometimes.
Yeah, this is the main issue for this business.
Yeah.
If you are able to properly stuff it into container, so that's
Hannah,
discount the transportation a lot, because instead of container should be Roro or something. Yeah.
right. Hannah, your farm equipment, are you buying that in country or shipping that over?
I believe we're buying that in Europe and then shipping it into Ukraine that way. Trying not to get that on a vessel by any means at all. But we do get a bunch of, different types of requests for a whole ton of different items to ship from the US, but no tractors so far. But I think we have an armored vehicle coming up. Those are just some things that we just weren't able to source, or maybe our donor at the time is located at a different location. But we try to, of course, buy things as close as possible to where we're distributing it.
Yes, Natalia with UA Resistance, they primarily ship ambulances filled with Matters mixed medical supplies. So that is the thing that they've been doing the last couple of years.
Very cool.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you everybody so much for your time. I appreciate it. There's always a lot happening behind the scenes, so it's good when we can grab these minutes in person to be able to chat. Hopefully, we'll see what happens in the next couple of months with the new administration and what happens in Ukraine. Of course, that's on a lot of our thoughts, and so we'll keep that in mind. But I know no matter what happens, everybody here is working on solving big problems and in their own way, and it's been amazing to see everybody work collectively as well. So wishing you all a wonderful year end. Thank you for all you do. I hope you all are able to get some rest. I know it's hard work. but it is not unnoticed and not unappreciated. So thank you all for your time. And if we can do anything in the meantime, then just let us know.
Christy, thank you for pulling us all together. This is magical, truly. It's so cool. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Bye,
Thank you all.
everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye now.